On his way back from the G20 summit in India, Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu stopped over in the United Arab Emirates. For about 2 years now, Nigerians have been denied visas in the UAE, rendering many living in that country unable to work and those wishing to travel or do business in the Gulf Cooperation country unable to do so. The diplomatic friction between Nigeria and Dubai, which climaxed with visa restrictions and flight cancellations, had given many Nigerian businesses a reason for concern. However, following President Bola Tinubu's strategic visit to the UAE, hopes for a strengthened bilateral relationship have been rekindled. So what does this mean for the Nigerian business community and the Naira? Joining me from Lagos, Nigeria is Ugodre Obi-Chukwu, who is the CEO, Nairametrics. Thank you so much, Ugo, for joining us on Business Edge.
Thank you for having me.
The UAE, with Dubai as its commercial epicenter, has long been a hub for Nigerian businesses in sectors ranging from real estate to trading and other sectors. Now, do you think the normalization of relationship will likely lead to a reinvigorated trade relationship and also provide Nigerian businesses with more opportunities in the Middle East?
Very much so. Trade between Nigeria and United Arab Emirates, it's around $1.5 billion. I think that's the last data we had a few years ago when Buhari also made a similar visit. So yes, United Arab Emirates, it's a very central hub, particularly for Nigerian businesses trying to do business around the East. So whether it's doing business in China or Japan or Korea or around the Middle East, they tend to see United Arab Emirates as the center point for accessing a lot of those markets. So not being able to, have any bilateral travel between Nigeria and Dubai, over the last few months has definitely negatively impacted ability of a lot of our companies to do businesses abroad. We do have banks who have United Arab Emirates as, one of their trading hubs where they tend to facilitate a lot of trades along the eastern part of the world. And so not being able to, travel or to do business to UAE has, been a major concern. So for Nigeria, I think it's important that this deal is struck and that, of course, that travel route is reopened because without that, that continues to affect trade between Nigeria and UAE. So for me, I think it's a good step in the right direction. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. Apart from the fact that a lot of Nigerians do, get jobs, from Dubai or see Dubai or Abu Dhabi as a destination for employment. It's also very important for the travel industry as well. So the travel industry relies a lot on Dubai as a major hub that connects Nigerians to a lot of other countries, whether in the Middle East or in the Far East. So it's a good one, and one should actually commend the government for this.
All right, I'd like my producer to put up the slide that had to do with the UAE's exports to Nigeria, because when we see that UAE as a country, as we see it in 2021, exported about $1.36 billion to Nigeria, looking at the products and, of course, equipment that were also exported to the country, we talk about $213 million, cars, jewelries, and we also look at the fact that during the last 25 years, the UAE exports to Nigeria increased at an annualized rate of 21.7% and the likes. Now, we see that there's a lot of exports from UAE to Nigeria. So I'd like to find out from you, in terms of what you've observed and your readings, what were the potential exports from Nigeria to the UAE? Because if you're talking about a bilateral trade agreement, it should run across from UAE to Nigeria and back from Nigeria to the UAE.
Unfortunately, it's actually very skewed. I think it's a lot more skewed to imports from UAE to Nigeria, just the same way it is with China. And let's also remember that there are very few countries that Nigeria run trade surpluses with, and those are countries that mostly have or need our crude oil exports. And so, the UAE doesn't need our crude oil export. So I think it's pretty understandable that trade balance is skewed towards their favor, unlike here in Nigeria. And like I mentioned, because it's such a trading hub, what you tend to see is a lot of capital flights out of Nigeria to the UAE. At most, it also serves as a hub for travel and as a hub for businesses, or for Nigerian businesses looking to do business, in the Southeast, whether it's Southeast Asia or within the Middle East. So doesn't necessarily, favor us as a trading hub, even as much as you have. It doesn't necessarily favor us as in terms of, trade balance. Nigerians also do import a lot of cars from Dubai as well. So trade doesn't necessarily favor Nigeria if you're looking at it, in terms of, trade balance. Just the same way it is with China. Nigeria does a lot of trade with China, but it's skewed more in the favor of China than in favor of Nigeria. But doesn't mean that we don't need Chinese products or we don't need Chinese trade. Chinese trade is very important to the Nigerian economy, just as much as trade with UAE is also very important to Nigeria. What we see is, rather than have the sort of trade surpluses that Nigeria would want with most countries, for UAE is mostly around investment into the country. And I recall a few years ago, they have had some investment, whether it's in power, I think in the power sector. I think there was a power plant deal that they had a few years ago in Nigeria. But that's as much as it is, or as it goes. Rather, you do see a lot of Nigerians moving outside, or moving capital outside Nigeria towards the UAE, whether it's to buy their real estate or to partake in their tourism, or as a trading route, as I mentioned earlier. Trade surplus or trade deficits between Nigeria and UAE will continue to remain in the next few years.
Well, yes, of course. According to statistics, we've been able to understand that Nigeria has been able to also export a few commodities, of course, to the United Arab Emirates. We talk about the volume now in 2021. $276 million were said to have been exported to the UAE. And we look at commodities like crude, petroleum, gold, petroleum gas, which are actually strong commodities or products that Nigeria has, of course, to export to these countries. So, like you said, it may be a little bit skewed, but then, of course, we have something that we offer these countries. But then let's move on and talk about the recent statement by the UAE's official Emirates news agency. It noted that its leader, that is Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, and President Bola Tinubu explored opportunities for further bilateral collaboration in areas that served the sustainable economic growth of both countries. Now, the statement, however, did not go into details about the lifting of the ban on Nigerians and the resumption of flights, which, of course, is very, very critical at this time. So what were the areas that were explored, and what is the current situation about the visa ban?
I think there was a bit of confusion around the visa ban. I think it was just the way that the communication was sent out. And maybe the euphoria around the visit. So initially, government officials had come out to say that, look, a deal had been struck, visa ban has been lifted, and then travel was about to start in just a few days. However, typically when you have bilateral meetings like this, it's either you have a joint statement or you have each diplomatic, on the diplomatic side, they all agree on how they want to craft out communication to the public. But I think in Nigeria's case, I think we kind of jumped the gun a bit, and then we had to now roll back a few days later to clarify that, look, a lot of the details of the deals are still being hammered. But between the leaders, it was purely agreed that, look, trade bilateral relationship needs to resume, particularly in terms of travel between Nigeria and Dubai and the United Arab Emirates. But then that is yet to be done. So they still need to hammer out what that means. Nigeria also needs its own demand. Nigerians want us to implement the full BASA agreement, which would require that we also do as much travel to Dubai, to United Arab Emirates, as much as they also do travel here to Nigeria. That's basically where the confusion is. The visa ban has not been lifted, at least as at yesterday. but it's work in progress. Travel hasn't resumed as well. They're still work in progress, but I think it's just a matter of time. In the next few days, I do believe that you would see an announcement confirming that this has already been concluded, and then Nigerians will be able to travel to United Arab Emirates again, and of course, and vice versa. And just to also clarify to your point, if you look at the data you had earlier, yes, a lot of the trade, we did do some trade with some exports to UAE in 2021, but we're in 2023. So 2022 and 2023, it's very, very limited, such that you can't even see it captured in the data of the National Bureau of Statistics. And so, and not just UAE, most countries as well. So again, like I mentioned, with the UAE, it's more of trade deficit than trade surplus. So as much as we are happy to see that ties are being renewed and Nigerians can still go back to traveling to the UAE, important to also note that it does lead to capital flight out of Nigeria. Not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a lot of capital coming to Nigeria. Rather, you're going to have capital go out of Nigeria. And then we all know, what that means for us in the country. We do need investments in Nigeria. We do need our dollars kept here. But the more, trading routes you open, particularly with countries where Nigerians like to travel a lot, there's going to be pressure on the exchange rate. And that is the concern that I have, with this deal.
Okay, so what about the trapped funds that, as at June this year, has risen to about $812 million? We know that the president has ordered a 3-month review and a meeting with the airlines. So what do you make of this particular situation? Because I know that the airlines for months now, if not for years, have been telling the federal government to please let the money go, because those were monies obtained from services rendered to Nigeria, and the Nigerian government came up with different excuses as to why. As a matter of fact, the Nigerian government might not even have the money to send back or to pay for the services being rendered by this foreign airline. So as we speak and where we stand, what do you make of this particular issue as regards the repatriated funds?
Honestly, I think that's going to be a thorny issue because it's not just with UAE. Most countries as well that Nigeria have, BASA agreements with, whether it's the UK, whether it's the US. Trap funds has been an issue, and I think a recent IATA report suggests Nigeria has, perhaps the highest when it comes to trap funds globally. With airlines funds that are trapped within the country. The problem, look, is there's just no money. We don't have the dollars to give. If we had the dollars to give, I think this is something that they should have solved since. But the dollars is not there. As much as we say we'll have $33 billion in external reserves, net's probably much lower than that. And so there's just no dollars. A pent-up demand it's between $7 and $12 billion, depending on who you're talking to, depending on what data you're looking at. And so it's not just airlines. There's just so many businesses that need to, repatriate FX out of Nigeria that have their money trapped in here. So it is how you prioritize these things that matters to the government. And so for the government, they need to, first of all, fix the supply problem that they're having, which is, I guess is what is top burner on the president's agenda, which is why you see him traveling to a lot of countries, trying to see how we can attract investment into Nigeria. That's actually what we need, investment into Nigeria. Without that, it's going to be difficult to meet up with any payment, whether it's trap funds or whether it's dividend that needs to be repatriated from companies or foreign companies operating in Nigeria. It's a general problem, and I don't really see any silver bullet here except being very patient.
Looking at the make of UAE and the economy, now, does it have that significant source of FDI for Nigeria? And of course, could this also signal an era that might lead to the influx of investments from the country into different areas, different sectors in Nigeria that may include infrastructure, energy, and maybe even technology? Do you see that happening soon with, of course, these talks that will be going on?
Oh, yes. Look, there's a lot that Nigeria offers, to the Middle East in terms of investment opportunities, FDIs particularly. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. Nigeria has the largest population in Africa. And so Nigeria also has huge infrastructure deficits. Thus, if you're able to, convince, foreign investors, particularly from the Middle East, who are awash with cash to come into Nigeria and invest, I think there's a huge opportunity for them as well. So that is what the president is trying to explore. Typically, what we tend to do in Nigeria is to go west. But these days, it appears going east might just be, the route as well. Whether it's through bilateral loans or whether it's through just direct FDIs of their companies, I think there's a huge opportunity here for not just for United Arab Emirates, but even for countries in the Middle East to invest in Nigeria. Strategically, it makes sense for them as much as it does economically. That's actually what we need, to be honest. As much as opening travel routes is important, but what we need more in Nigeria is foreign investments. And instead of just always going to to the West, or relying on funds from the World Bank, or relying on maybe IMF facilities, we can also attract foreign investments from the East. We don't do that much if you look at Nigeria's total debt structure, you don't see any from the Middle East. Rather, you do see from the West and to a large extent China. But there's a lot of capital that can be deployed from the Middle East to Nigeria, particularly UAE, Saudi Arabia as well. That is why you see the government going there, trying to see if we can strike any major deal that will allow capital inflow into Nigeria in the form of FDI. That is actually what we need, not FPI. These days, when you're talking to foreign investors from the West, they tend to usually go with FPIs rather than FDIs. But then, if you go to investors in the Middle East and Southeast Asia, it's very likely that you might be able to attract FDIs. And let's also remember that Nigeria is very strategically located in Africa, and being the largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria is a window to a huge market. For Middle Eastern companies that are also expanding their global footprint. So I think it's a good deal on both sides. If the president is able to push this or to get this done, I think it's going to be mutually beneficial, particularly for Nigerians who is in dire need for foreign investments.
And another area we need to talk about is the issue of agriculture, which of course is another critical sector of the Nigerian economy. And more so now that Dubai is known as a duty-free country and a major port of entrance into the Gulf Cooperation Council. So do you think that it could serve as a market for Nigeria's agricultural products?
Yes, it does. We're seeing a lot of move towards the east, like I mentioned before, as an export market for Nigerian businesses. Which was why, if you look at the delegation that the president went with to India, he did have a lot of food processing companies on the list of delegation to India. To India, so to UAE as well is also one of those hubs. As much as it's not a very large country in terms of the amount of mouth to feed, but then, like I mentioned earlier, it's a major trading hub and could serve as a port of entry for a lot of Nigerian goods. I do think that the immediate markets, particularly for food processing export from Nigeria, is within Africa, and that would be the immediate choice if you were to ask me, especially when you look at the advantages that AFCFTA brings to Nigeria. But then you still have foreign markets that are strategically positioned to purchase agro products from Nigeria. But then it all depends on how well we are also able to fix our own internal problems. We've not been able to be self-sufficient when it comes to food in Nigeria, let alone being able to export as much as we want outside the country. But then this is a possibility. The Russian-Ukraine one, poses an opportunity for us as a country to seize. So yes, I do agree that this is a good opportunity. It all depends on how well we are able to fix our own internal issues, giving us an opportunity to at least take advantage of new export markets for food processing products or raw agro products.
Yes, talking about fixing our internal issues, we know that there is a lot of potential, just as you have hinted as per these bilateral talks with the UAE. But then we want to also look at Nigeria's economic system and the different policies that have been rolled out by this administration, which to some economists have said has not really favored the Nigerian economic ecosystems as we speak. Of course, you will want to look at the Nigerian bourse with the fluctuations in there, and investors will not want to come and plug in their money into an economy that is not stable or will not guarantee that it would yield benefits for them. So just in about a minute, I'd like to find out if you were to advise the Nigerian government, what would you tell it in terms of the policies that it should roll out to ensure that it fixes the critical fundamental issues as regards the economy, and not have businesses domiciled in Nigeria have to pack up and shut down the operations and leave because of the choking business environments?
To be honest, there's no silver bullet here. I think the government, as it is at the moment, seem to be doing the right things. But then when you consider where we're coming from and how bad things have been, it's going to be very difficult. We're really in a deep hole, and digging out of it, it's not going to be very easy. But in terms of what the government needs to do, one thing that we've often talked about at Nairametrics is how funds are going to be channeled. We're talking about attracting foreign investments from maybe the likes of the UAE. That money has to go through the capital market, and that's because the capital market is very well structured to receive foreign investment, whether it's through FDIs or FPIs. And it's also very easy to track, measure, and then assess how that capital is being deployed. And transparency is also very well there for everyone to see. So for me, I think that's one area that the government needs to, perhaps strengthen in terms of their policy framework. Most of the companies that are going to do a lot of the infrastructure projects that we want to embark on, most of the funds that the government are going to deploy for capital projects have to go through companies that are listed on the exchange. That's what I suggest that we do, because that way, I think you're able to see a ripple effect. You're able to also properly structure capital formation, which is very important for us as a country. So, and then of course, we've talked about reforms around taxes as well. A lot of multiple taxation still exists in Nigeria today, despite a lot of work that the government has done over the years. I think with the new committee that the government has set up, we do expect to see immense progress from there. That's very important to give businesses confidence. And then, of course, port reforms is also very important. We do still know that it's very difficult for you to even export goods out of Nigeria. If you want to export goods out of Nigeria, the wait time is just too long. Corruption in the port still exists. So we do need to also fix some of those things if you're going to attract, foreign investors into your country. Foreign investors are going to come into Nigeria and then start to struggle to want to export goods out of the country. Okay. I think we've sorted out exchange rate issues to a large extent. So being able to repatriate your money might not be difficult, even though we still face supply related issues as well. Okay. Insecurity, I think that also needs to be sorted out. And then finally, infrastructure. Infrastructure is very important. Businesses don't want to come into a country where you don't have a functioning airport, you don't have functioning roads, you don't have a good railway system to move goods across. You still have power related issues. So if you're able to solve or to fix a lot of those infrastructure deficit that we have on the country in the short term, and then you will start to, attract, foreign investments, which is what Nigeria needs. So it's a good thing that the government is going, the president particularly, has been traveling around the world trying to see if he can attract foreign investment into Nigeria. But then people will start to move when they start to see what we're doing locally and how well we're able to at least fix some of the things that we tend to call low-hanging fruits, or things that are within our control, like sorting out the airport and the railway, like I mentioned earlier.
Obi-Chukwu, CEO Nairametrics. Thank you so much for your insights on the show this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.